Another part is your identity. This is your stories. If you were to all pull out your phones, you don't have to, but if you were to pull out your phone, some of you have iOS phones. I have an Android OS. Some may have BlackBerry. That's your operating system. Human beings' operating system is story. This research is solid on this, and I can talk to you in breaks or later if you want to, but the research is really, if you want to teach students math, you teach them story form, how to tell a good story, and they get mathematical problems better than they do if they don't understand narrative storytelling. It's amazing the research that's been done there. So let's look at three different types of stories. The first one you'll be the most familiar with because you're in a group of people. How many people in this room there are people in this room that you haven't yet met? Okay, so you're, I guess, very popular because you know everybody. Cool, all right. But typically at a conference like this, that's the case. So think about your stock stories. When I was in college, I was dating this really, really awesome woman, young lady, and trying to impress her. So I told her something. And my roommate rolled his eyes and looked at her and said, if you're with him any length of time, you're going to hear that story a lot. That's one of his stock stories. And she has. She's 24 years this past May. She's the one rolling her eyes now. But so think about this as you're going through the breaks and lunch and the happy hour at the end. What are the stories that you use to identify yourself, to help people understand who you are? Start cataloging those. When I went to my first nonprofit storytelling conference, I thought I should get in touch with these. I ended up listing over the course of a few days 600 prompts, story prompts. Of just different stories I tell myself, and it moved into a second area of stories that we tell ourselves, the ones that we'd never tell anybody else but are going on in our head all the time. Oh, I always do that. Oh man, I'm so bad with names. I remember faces but not names. As you go through looking at your stories, Jessica Sharp, if you ever want to learn more about how your brain acts on stress, Jessica Sharp of Sharp Brain Consulting has her clients go through the stock stories and listening to either for a day or for 3 days or a week, just writing out what are you saying to yourself right now? And then she has this powerful question. Review the list, look at it and say, would you ever say that to a friend? Typically, no. Typically, we're much harder and more brutal on ourselves than we'd ever be on a friend. So, one of the things you might want to do as you walk through the rest of this day is try to be your own best friend. If you mess up, don't say, I always mess up, I'm such an idiot. Maybe you're training your voice to say, man, I did it again, but I'm getting better. For me, it was faces and names. I could remember faces forever, but I couldn't remember names so well. And then I realized that's memory. Maybe I need to re-script myself. So I said, I must be really, internally, I would never say this to other people, but hey, I can remember faces, so I must remember names too. And I've noticed, it's taken 30 years, but I've noticed that I've changed and I have a much better ability to remember names. So knowing what your stock stories are knows how you're directing yourself. The other type of stories that you could do are the characters you identify with. There's an author named John Eldredge, who is the person I learned this from. He said, think about the books and the movies and the stories that you gravitate towards, and then think about the characters that you most identify with. Fascinating thing. The typical pattern for most of us that do this is dumb. This means nothing, and then you can unpack the characters. So let me take you, the person I told you about with the NPR PBS, he was, and he lets me tell the story. He did this homework, he said, I don't know, this is weird. So the next time we got on the call and he said, Mark, I got nothing for you. There are two people, Sean Connery in Hunt for Red October, and Kevin Costner in Dances with Wolves. What do they have in common? I mean, British and American, nothing. So I took it upon myself to do the research. I watched both movies because that was serving well, and I love movies. And we were able to parse together the story of both of them were military characters, military figures, who were willing to learn more about the enemy and learn their language, the Americans or the Native Americans, and try to figure out maybe we could coexist, maybe we could work together, which threatened the armies that they served. And so the armies wanted to kill them and kick them out. Why does this matter for this guy? He was in a traditional TV broadcast that had shifted to radio broadcast medium, and the unionized labor force wanted to go back to the big TV studios because where the cameras were big and you needed a lot of space because they were hot. But he was actually trying to think about, what about digital podcasting? NPR One hadn't come out at that point. It was just about to come out. So I think podcasting is something where we could serve our audience better. And I think we could split our radio station so it's not mixed format, but it's news and a separate classical station. Totally threatened the laborized union force to the point where they were sending poison pen letters to their board, trying to get the CEO fired. But in our calls after that, we were able to say, okay, you're under attack, but you're doing the right thing. It's for the right reasons. And let's see, and then we tried to help him show the staff how this is fulfilling the mission. This isn't a new thing, it's not a change, it's not a curveball, it's trying to address with new technology. Knowing the characters that you resonate with can be really significant. One woman in Chicago said Katniss and Princess Leia. She came up really quickly. And I said, why? And she said, they're both badasses who could fight. There are women who are badasses who could fight, and I need to with my board, because her board had told her, I don't really know why we have this organization. I think we're just a jobs program for you guys, for the staff. And he was going to be the board chair in 6 months. Yeah. So, and she said Princess Leia held her head high and still was a warrior. And so on our subsequent calls, we were able to harken back to that and set up a curriculum, that a seemingly winsome and non-scheduled curriculum for that board chair. Every 3 to 4 weeks, she'd say, oh, hey, I just come across this article, or I just came across this video. I think you guys should watch it. And she started training the vice chair too, so that she wouldn't be too infected by the one term of this other guy. So knowing your stories are important. The last one is a little bit more morbid. It's your eulogy. What would people say if you died? What would your business colleagues, your nonprofit colleagues, your community, your family, friends, what would they say? And if that's too weird, because it is, think about if you weren't to come home today. What would be written about you in the newspaper? And then you can look at it and say, that's not what I want. I want something else to be said about me. And maybe I know for me it was my kids. I want my kids to know they love them, and I showed the love by staying in the office and making sure that I was providing financially for them. And when I did my eulogy, I realized, they would not know that was loving them. They know FaceTime. And so we tried, not the tech, but like the physical incarnate FaceTime. So we tried to make sure that there were ways that I was actually supporting being a parent in a way that they understood, and that was good for our marriage too, to do that.